Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, we've been renovating our 1961 Aljo, which serves as the photo booth camper for our business, Lamp House Photo. Last time, we got the cabinets in, we got the walls up, feeling pretty gung-ho, and this time, we're going to do some more crazy stuff. We're going to try to get that ceiling wrap on, and the studs in, and the welting on, not exactly in that order. So part of my plan for doing the wrap on this was to pre-make most of those panels and have them just ready to go, so you just put them up there and zip, 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 and there you have it. As I was pre-cutting everything, I started to think about what that would actually mean. Ideally, your walls are perfectly parallel to one another and they're, exactly the same width apart, and you can count on, if I cut each one of these ceiling joists and each one of these panels the same width, it'll go on perfectly and no problems. Yay. If that's the case with your camper, I don't know what sort of magic gumdrop land you live in, but in the world that I live in, nothing's ever exactly right. I mean, close, but not exactly right. And it would be a shame to cut all of those panels and have them ready to go in and then realize, oh, there's some sort of problem here where things aren't lining up right. We're going to cut things and we're going to fit them up there and we're going to see and check and make sure everything is lining up correctly. My ceiling on this camper is 3/4 of an inch thick, which means I got a bunch of 1x8s and I cut them in half. So I have a bunch of basically 3.5 inch wide pieces that are 3/4 of an inch thick. Some of these probably will need to be cut a little bit narrower if they're right on a curve. This is kind of wide. I've cut some of these to what I think should be the exact width of the camper, and I'm just going to put those up there, clamp them into place, make sure they're square, and do this several times to make sure that everything is lining up just so. Well, that's an easy one. So I put 4 of those joists kind of in evenly spaced distances around the camper so I could get a good feel for whether I've got the right width. You can measure your floor and say, okay, well, that's exactly this wide, so that's the width they're all going to be. But, it's always better to check. So I'm confident on my width now, so I just need to go and cut everything to that width and then start thinking about actual spacing on these ceiling joists. I didn't write any of that down from when I was taking it apart, because when we rebuilt it, we kind of just put them in there evenly spaced. So I'm just going to try and match them up with kind of the wall studs and make sure they're good and well anchored. One thing I should say before I get too much further on this is when you put these back together, you have to put them back together this way with all the skins off because that ceiling material that you're going to wrap around there actually has to be as wide as your camper is going to be, and then it gets nailed down into this outside radius board on your wall, and that's what makes this all very strong. It's not really those ceiling joists. Those aren't really doing much of anything except keeping those panels from bowing and giving you places to nail down into your cabinets from and things like that. But it's those panels overlapping the walls that are the most important. Loads of people that tear these apart from the inside and start putting their paneling back up, and that's what really weakens them. That's really kind of a no-no with these vintage campers. I'm also going to attach those joists, most of them anyway, to those panels before I put them in, because that makes it so much easier, and I'll show you what I'm talking about when I get there. So for now, I'm going to start cutting stuff to length now that I feel pretty confident on that, and get things ready to go together. So what I've just made is a saw guide, basically, for my circular saw, so I can make a nice straight cut without having to worry about it drifting or anything like that, because I need to cut down the paneling that's going to make the roof. Is this necessary? No, it's not 100% necessary, but this is really simple to do. The circular saw rides along this factory edge of a piece of plywood, and the blade rides right along this now. So I can just line up this edge with wherever I want my cut to be, run my circular saw down it, and I know I have a nice straight cut. And this is 8 foot long, so I can do a whole sheet of plywood, or I can put it sideways and do a crosscut on it. So pretty useful. That took maybe, I don't know, 10 minutes to make. I did not come up with this. I'm not going to take credit for it. If you don't subscribe to the Workshop Companion, I suggest you do. If you do much woodworking at all, there's a lot of really useful information there, and I really enjoy their channel, so check it out. Okay, so typically for your ceiling panels, you're going to want to use some sort of 1/8 inch plywood. Anything thicker than that, and it's not going to want to bend around the curves easily. And a lot of people ask me, hey, where do you find 1/8 inch birch? I can't find it anywhere. I can't find it anywhere either. I am not using birch panels. I am using 2.7 millimeter utility panels. You can buy these at Home Depot. I haven't found them anywhere else, and not every Home Depot has them. They can all get them, so you might have to order these from Home Depot. For a 4x8 panel are currently $18. When I started doing this, they were like $12. So they've gone up a little bit, but still vastly more affordable than trying to find birch. Now, if you're going to do a nice like amber shellac or any kind of finish on this where it's going to show the wood grain, this might not be the stuff you want to use. Since I'm doing a photo booth, I'm painting the ceiling white just like everything else in there. I don't really care what this wood looks like. So I'm actually going to cut these down from a 4 foot wide panel to a 3 foot wide panel. The reason for doing that is that it's usually easier to wrap those panels around there if they're not quite so long. You're not trying to put as extreme of a bend into each individual panel. Granted, you start at both ends and you kind of go up like this, and you've got 3 foot panels going this way, and then the one in the middle is likely to be slightly different. So don't just go ahead and cut all your panels thinking they're all going to be 3 foot and they're going to fit perfectly. Put it up there, and then that last one you're going to need to size up and get cut accordingly. Okay, so I've got all the panels cut to size. Now I need to attach some of the ceiling joists to those panels before I install them. The reason for doing that is because obviously if you take your panel and try to put up there in the middle, it's going to want to sag while you're putting it up there. And if you go ahead and tack down your ends while it's sagging in the middle, when you let go of it, that sag's there. You've already put that extra distance in there. So you have to really have these completely flat when you tack them down. So you really have to have a ceiling joist running between them to prevent that sort of sag from happening. So you need to find out where those are going to be and attach some of them to your panels. So what I think is handy to do is to create a story stick that tells the story of where all those joists need to be located on the outside radius board. I've taken some of the cutoffs from those panels and I've gone ahead and cut strips off of them that are each 3 foot long, just like the panels. So a story stick is something that you can make marks on that correspond to whatever this measurement is, and then you can take this and transfer it over to whatever other thing you need to transfer those marks to. I'll show you how I do that. So you're going to want to take one of these and take your A-clamps and clamp it down nice and tight to this. You don't want any gaps or sags or anything. And then I've already got my bottom joist here, so I put it there and I make a mark. Then I know I want another joist right here because that's level with where the bench is, and I'm going to add some more behind this, so I need something here to support the back of this. So I want to put a joist here. So I could hold this here or clamp it and make a mark, or I could take another little cutoff piece and hold that there. Make an X where a joist is. And there you have it. Just go along and do that for all your other joists, and then we'll take this off and take it over to the panel and transfer these marks over there. There's a few things that are kind of important to keep track of. One, what number panel is this? Make sure you write it on there and keep it consistent. Also, which direction does this go? I wrote up, but really it should be front to back, kind of pointing this direction. Now, it doesn't really matter which side of the camper you take these from, because ideally you want those joists to all be square. So it's going to be the same on one side as it is on the other. So I'll use the same stick to transfer those marks to both sides. And then we'll just line up our joists on there, glue them down, clamp them, flip them over, tack them into place, and let that dry, and those should be good to go. I'm also going to go ahead and paint those panels while they're off, because again, it's just easier to paint things when it's disassembled. Yeah, looks pretty good. I just brought this panel over here and just clamped it in place just to make sure everything was lining up right. I'll leave this here and then I'll put the next story stick up and mark it. Keep in mind when you're doing this, there are some things that need to be in a specific place. So you will want to locate those, like the window actually sits on the top of the joist that's going to go right here. So I know that the next one is going to need to be exactly far enough that the window will fit in there. Same with the top vent and same with the rear window. You also need to consider about your lights. Is there a joist where you can screw those to if they require it, or however they mount? It's just a little bit of planning and a little bit of thought that goes into it, but nothing about it is especially difficult. Okay, well, I spent most of my day finishing these panels up. I didn't really film it because it's kind of more of just the same as doing the other ones. After I did the first 3 panels on the front, I just came around here to the back and started at the bottom and went up to the top. And kind of the reason you do that is because, you know, it's never going to be 100% perfect when you wrap it up. So right in the middle, you're going to have to kind of custom fit that last panel. And I haven't done that yet because I'm going to wait until these are permanently attached to figure out that last panel. So I've just got everything clamped up here right now. I'm going to start taking those clamps off, and I'm going to bring those panels back down, and I'm going to prime and paint them, and then I'm going to install the welting on both walls so that I can then go back and permanently attach these. You know, I know it's kind of like, well, why did you even bother putting them up there? I don't know. You know, part of me thinks that maybe the glue's going to dry better with them in their flexed final configuration. I'm actually going to keep working today because, you know, painting is kind of boring and it just takes time, so I'm just going to do it. Okay, so slight change in plans. The first 2 panels that I primed, and I kind of thought this could be an issue. There's enough moisture in the primer that they want to go. So we're going to move ahead with installing a little bit of welting and then installing those 2 panels permanently to the camper, and then we'll just paint them from the inside, I guess. Working after dark, you're doing something wrong. So this is the next panel that's due to go up, and that you'll notice that I've run the stud all the way out here to the edge of the panel. That does make things a little bit easier for lining them up, but instead of just wrapping more layers around the outside to build up the curbing, there will be layers that are cut and fill in between here. Now, originally, these would have been set back by an inch or so, and there'd be several more layers of plywood built up on this outside, just like when I built up the curve there. And then when they installed these panels, they would toenail them through the ends into the walls. And sometimes what happens when you do that is you don't really catch much of the wall. So this way, having this fully overlapping the wall, you can nail or screw straight down through these and catch the outside radius board, or preferably catch one of your wall studs much more effectively. One other thing you definitely want to do is you want to pre-drill your ceiling joists and countersink those screws, because it is really easy to split the ends of these boards if you don't. You really don't want them to split, because then you don't have a whole lot of, your screw's not going to really hold very well. Okay, so yeah, I didn't really say a whole lot about it. That one's always a pain in the butt. Yeah, it's kind of hanging at a weird angle, and the two back walls, because they're sort of just out there, they want to kind of wiggle a little bit, so you really got to force them in line with that panel so that everything's nice and flush, so that you know everything's going together, straight without any kind of bows or kinks. One thing you might want to kind of persuade those panels in there is a dead blow hammer. It's one of these little hammers with the sand in the head. You just kind of tap it in. If you're having trouble getting them to really align, put a clamp on there, because then when you smack that on the side, that pressure from that clamp will kind of hold it once it's moved in, and you can get your staples or screws or whatever in there. So, okay. The next panels will undoubtedly be easier. Nice. Okay, so the trick to being able to nail back up through there is you have to have something pushing down on the top. Now, what I usually do is I take a 2x4 and I put it up there. I put it up there like this, so it's standing up on its edge, and then I clamp it down. But I usually clamp it diagonally across there so that you ideally get more of the force in the center of it than at the edges. I don't know that it really works that way, but that's the theory behind it anyway. So what you might need to do is put a couple of blocks on either side and clamp it down over that, and then you can go under there and shoot your nails back up through it, and it's pretty easy. I was a little sad I'd done such a good job I wouldn't get to show this, but take your sonic tool and just push that panel up and run this right along the gap, and it'll still eat away just enough wood to open that up to where they'll fit almost flush with one another and leave just about a blade's width gap between them. Okay, so to finish this off, you need to add curbing, which that brings your wall up to the same thickness in between your studs as your studs are. Take some of your leftover bits of plywood and cut them into strips that fit neatly in between there. Because this is a curved surface, each one of these will be a slightly different length, which is kind of fun to figure out. You just hold it up there and cut it. Once you've got them to size, you want some staples that'll go all the way through them. Put glue between them, clamp them up here into place, take your staple gun and just bim, 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 bim. I got all the curbing done. It actually took like 5-6 hours to do all of it. It took quite a while. So now I'm going to run my belt sander around the outside and just smooth off any spots that might not be quite 100% even, and cut out the openings using my trim router for the windows. So hard to believe it, but that's about it for doing framing. I think that's going to conclude this video. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. I certainly enjoyed being able to finally put this together and make it look like a camper again. So thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.